Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad to be here today and I'm glad that you found me. And today I want to talk about, I'm trying to decide really even like how, what I'm going to title this video really, and how I want to talk about what I'm about to talk about. So, I think that it's kind of about shadow work. Well, it's also about the way that our, hold on. Okay. It's also about the way that our internal reality is reflected by the external reality, or vice versa. Um, it's really hard to say what comes first. So I want to say, first of all, to start off this video, that what I'm going to say today is just the way that I see things. I guess this is information that I feel is the truth, and it's information that I feel like is being channeled through me. I don't believe that anyone else needs to buy into the fact that it's the truth. And, if you've listened to any of my other videos, you know that I really believe that, like, we, we know our truth when we hear it. And so, if this video is for you, I believe that that's what will happen, that you will hear the truth and know that it's the truth for you. And if it's not, it's fine. You can definitely leave it. So, anyway, I want to talk a little bit, I guess, what has sparked this for me. A lot of times when I share things about what I feel like is going on, collectively, or when I kind of like get on here and share this information, it's when I'm personally going through things. And I feel like it's meant to be that way for me for a reason. That, like, I experience the energies that are happening in my own personal life. And I'm able to, sort of like reflect on them, and it makes things really make sense in a different way. So hopefully that makes some sense, what I just said. So basically what has sparked me doing this video, I've actually been thinking about making this video for a really long time. But I like to, I have to be like at a certain vibration when I make these videos. What happens to me is that it's like I like get these I start getting these downloads, and like things start coming in, and it's not like it's things that I don't already know or haven't known before, that like some of us know, right? Some of it, and I feel like something happens inside of me, and like I can feel this energy rising inside of me, and the vibration gets to this certain point, and I know that it's like time to make a video. So it's interesting to me how that happens. In that I've been thinking about making this video for a while, and then just suddenly it's time. And what sparked it is all the things that are going on in the world. So right now, like, as I'm making this video, it's during the time that, there are all these protests going on, the Black Lives Matter, and all of the stuff over George Floyd's death, and there are riots happening everywhere, and people are turning against each other. And there's this divide that feels like it's becoming larger and larger. And I guess that I see things really from like a different perspective. Like, I am very much about equality, and I believe that racism is a real thing, and it happens to people of color every day. They live through racism, and I feel for myself that it's really important for me to advocate for equality. And so, and I also believe in advocating for freedom. There are so many ways in which, like, externally and internally, we're held captive, basically. Like, our freedom is taken from us, our power is taken from us. And so I'm about freedom and equality. And as I've been watching all of this stuff that's been happening, it's like I can clearly see the way that people are being turned against each other and divided. And yesterday, sorry, it's interesting that this is happening to me right now because this is actually a message that I've been wanting to share for a while, and I've had a really hard time finding my voice in it. And so, you know, I'm a believer in like chakras and the way that like different kinds of traumas and stuff are held in our bodies. And so it's really interesting to me that I'm literally like losing my voice as I'm trying to share this message. Really interesting. And I believe that that's because I do have some fear of sharing this message. So I'm just going to put that out there. In any case, I really see like from a different perspective the way that this is like a dark night of the soul, and I see the separation, and what I want to talk about today is the way that that really like reflects what's happening internally. And so people who know me and know that I really am a believer that like what is happening externally is a reflection of us internally, and how like we see our reality and what's going on based on what's happening inside of us. And I believe that collectively that we have some really big shadow work to do, and that's what's happening right now. Like all of this you know, all of this stuff that's happening is like a collective shadow work. And so I've wanted to make a video about shadow work for some time, and I like to really relate things to myself, to ourselves. And you know, I believe that like the reason that I'm here on this earth right now is to help people see themselves. And you know, I've been through a lot of things that have forced me to see myself, and I believe that I've had that privilege for that to happen in my life in a really serious way, so that I can share it with other people. And shadow work is something that's like really a part of me. And it's funny because actually as I've been, you know, really like building my own business as a therapist, and also a business as a Reiki practitioner, I've decided to embody the the archetype of Persephone. And ever since I did that, it was actually like through a workshop that I was a part of, and somebody was talking about like creating our archetypes and or like marketing based on an archetype, and it was about like the different goddesses, and I knew during that workshop like that Persephone was what my work really embodies. And you know, Persephone is really about falling in love with the darkest parts of ourselves. And what's funny is that ever since then, all these things have come up about Persephone. It's been really interesting. You know, a friend actually told me about a book a really long time ago. I mean, not a really long time ago. It was probably like, I don't know, a few months ago. And I had the book on my list of things that I wanted to get, and I didn't buy it. And then a few days after the workshop, I remembered that I wanted to buy this book, and I bought it, and I opened it up, and the intro part actually talks about Persephone. And then I was like watching a video of someone who I really like, and she started to talk about Persephone. And then this astrologer that I like, also, I was like listening to one of his podcasts, and he started to talk about Persephone. And so it's really funny, just the synchronicity and how that works, and how Persephone has really just been showing up in my life. So that's really like the work that I embody. I believe that that I'm here to like help people to see their shadow, and in that it means that I'm continually seeing my own. And it's really interesting. So anyways, last night I had a really hard night. Like, I was okay, I've been okay through all of this, and feeling like really like standing in my own power and my own knowledge of like what's happening. And last night I just had a really hard time. Thinking of like the way that people are turning against each other, the way that that it's like this mass separation, and like the violence and all of the things, right? And it really reminds me so much of the beginnings of my own shadow work, where I saw these like darknesses inside of me. They were like fighting to get out. And that's what I think really happens, is that like we are taught, there's this idea in our society that like your shadow is bad, that it's bad parts of yourself, and you should deny it, basically. You should live in love and light, you should live in gratitude and live in all the positivity. And although I do believe that those things are true, we can't truly live in love and light unless we've seen our darkness. Because when we shove it down and we deny it, it demands to be heard, right? And like collectively, that's what's happening. We have been like shoving away these dark things that we've been doing, separating. And it's interesting to me even that it's like about people of color, because like we're talking about darkness, the darkness inside of ourselves, and how like we have separated people of color in this really systemic way that's like so deep that that we can't even see it, in the same way that like when we have this darkness inside of us and we shove it away and we deny it, it's so deep inside of us that we don't even know that it's a part of us, and it controls what we do, right? It like influences our lives. It influences our relationships. It influences everything. And that's really similar to what's happening in the world right now, right? And so it's like when we start to do the shadow work, we start to see our shadow, a lot of times it's at least for me, a lot of times my reaction is to want to run from it, to deny it, to hide it, to fight against it. It's like I have all of these tactics, and I'll go through each of them until I realize that they're not working. And, last night I actually ended up sending a message to a friend of mine who I felt like, would understand. And it was really hard for me to send that message. Because when I am experiencing things that I don't necessarily want to experience, I don't want other people to know it. I don't want to share it. I want to keep it to myself. I feel embarrassed, And actually, it's coming to mind, actually, this NF song where NF says, everybody has a dark side. I feel embarrassed when they see mine. And that is something that definitely happens to me when I'm in that space, And it's really the truth that every one of us has that, right? It's like life is about, I guess, like I imagine it being like moving back and forth between I don't necessarily want to say between our light and our dark, right? Because it's actually about them becoming one. It's about like it not like I believe that like ultimately being in a place where we just recognize that we just are. And it's like so ingrained in us to hide from our darkness, to hide our darkness. And eventually, if we don't do the work, crazy things happen in our lives, you know, because we will always act out in that darkness in ways that we just can't see. Like sometimes we're just, you know, that's like denial. Like we are oblivious to the way in which it is affecting us. And how, you know, it affects the people around us. And it's kind of embarrassing when you see your shadow and you sort of know that like everyone else, or not everyone else, but that like people in your life have seen your shadow before you have. So I mean, at least that's how I felt. I felt embarrassed. In the same way, I guess, that I almost feel like even embarrassed for our country, that it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to me that all of this shadow is coming out, you know, that we truly are just like, and I'm not saying that everyone is racist, because I don't believe that. But I believe that there is this underlying vein of racism in our country, that like our country is built on it. And so I don't know, all of that. It's like, also, you know, when doing that shadow work, I feel like it's really common to, again, like I was saying, like I go through every tactic that I have, right? It's like, how can I control this? How can I like expose my shadow to myself without it being uncomfortable? How, you know what I mean? And that's actually just like not how it works. So shadow work is extremely uncomfortable. And when I try to cover it with positivity, it seeps out everywhere, you know? When and also like, it feels like a battle within myself, right? It feels like a separation of myself where I like am trying to deny that shadow is a part of me. And for instance, just kind of thinking about even, you know, that message that I sent last night, like, I felt embarrassed that I was like stuck in that energy. And so, yeah, I felt embarrassed that I was stuck in that energy. I didn't want to expose that like shadow to anyone else. I also didn't want to recognize it for myself. I wanted to be like, you're above this, right? Like, because like I feel like I have enough knowledge, enough practice, that I would not engage, right? That I would not get stuck in that. But it's not the truth, right? It's like, and so I feel like I really did a service to myself by reaching out and sending that message, even though I felt embarrassed about it. Even though it was like afterwards, even, you know, Brene Brown talks about like having a vulnerability hangover. I felt that, and I was like, I didn't want my friend to see that part of me. And I feel like the more that we expose those parts of ourselves, the more that we let the light shine on our darkness, right? The more that we are able to just embrace and love ourselves anyway. And so that's really like the challenge is instead of like seeing it as separate, seeing the darkness as separate from us, knowing that it's a part of us, and loving that part of ourselves. And so I guess like going back to kind of what's happening in the world, that I see all of this separation. And I made a video actually about duality. the last video that I posted was about duality and about how when we live in duality, we can't see the truth. And that's like also what I see going on. It's like the separation is being fed so much that we can't even see the reality of what's happening. Like, we're so unwilling to look at our darkness and to love the dark part of ourselves, to love our darkness, that that we are just like sorry, one second. So we are so unwilling to even, see the two like parts of ourselves as one, right? And I feel like that really is the solution. It's like really important for us to acknowledge the darkness of what's happening. And also, sometimes that looks like getting a little bit lost in it. And I think about just the way that like people are in that energy of really being lost in it, but like it's the only way that it's exposed. So it's like when we, like what I was saying, like when we like try to hide our darkness, and we're unwilling to actually like really tap into it, we can actually we cannot incorporate it into ourselves until we have truly stepped into it. And I'm not saying that we need to like go out and like be dark people, right? But sometimes like really looking at the dark parts of ourselves that we would like to deny are there, and being like, yes, this is me, and like reveling in it for a minute, is, I feel like, where the work really is at. And by doing that, it's this process of integrating that into ourselves. And so the way I see that unfolding in the world is like, right now it's so extreme how we have these two extremes like fighting against each other, and it's all just like being exposed. But I do believe that it's being exposed to be changed. It's being exposed to really be able to be like, yes, this is something that's happening in our world, and we want it to be different. And so even though it's like really hard to watch, it's really hard for me personally to even know like what action to take. I've been having to really sit with myself, to listen to myself, to know like what action is it that I actually, my soul is calling me to take in this. Because I do not want to be a part of what I see as like an outside agenda. And I mean, I feel like you can say I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever. I am, by the way. You can say that all you want. But it's like, I clearly see this like agenda that is unfolding that has been planned out for a really long time. And the way that like we have been primed in so many ways to fall in line with this agenda. And I don't want to be a part of that at all. I want nothing to do with that. And I believe that just in the same way that like we can plan so many things for ourselves in our lives, and like have this agenda and think that we know like we're in control, right? I mean, there have been times in my life where I thought that I had this shit locked down. I was so in control, and then bam, you know, like God comes along and whacks me upside the head and is like, haha, just kidding. All of that was actually a part of my plan. And so I feel like that's kind of what's happening in the world. And so it's like, I see this outside agenda. I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to participate in it. And I see the way that it's actually a part of this unfolding of something that is like destined to happen. And that it, to me, is us waking up. And that's really the reason why I'm here making these videos, and that's the reason why I do and say so many of the things that I do, and that's the reason why my practice is what it is. That like I believe that ultimately we are here to awaken, and that's what's happening. So waking up isn't always pleasant. In fact, sometimes it's like a shitstorm, you know? So that's what I wanted to share. So I'm really glad that you guys are here, and I hope that this video has been helpful, and I am definitely going to be back to share more, but I have somewhere to be, so I'll be back soon.